Hello, and welcome, ghouls, to day 13 of 13 Days of Horrible Crafts and even scarier stories. Today we conclude our series with part 2 of the Southern Lapwing, written by Sean. Please do check out his YouTube channel, linked in the description, for some great horror movie videos. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy. As I said before, I came to Uruguay with the intent to take care of some much-needed shit. My dad was gone, his money was gone, and well, I may or may not have brought his house down to rubble. I'm not quite sure of anything that happened last night. It was a dream, but it wasn't. Some of it was real, and some of it was, I don't know, cursed. The only thing I really knew for sure was I had his knife back, and every tooth in my lower jaw felt like it needed a root canal. The pain was unbearable and only started last night. I drank some more tequila to help with the pain, and found myself unsure of how to locate that evil wench of a woman. I watched her apartment for some time, but I don't have the patience to do a stakeout. I began knocking on neighbors' doors, asking if they knew where she went, asking if she left a forwarding address. No one would help me. I called Esteban to see if he knew anything. He said she had probably moved out of the apartment if she emptied out all of his bank accounts. I didn't doubt that for a second. There was only 2 local bars in the town. She would eventually show up at one, as she drank as much as my dad did, supposedly. I told Esteban where I'd be if he heard anything else. So, I went to the local bar that wasn't in walking distance from my dad's house and sat in a booth. I didn't have anywhere else to be, and it was better to do a stakeout in a bar rather than in a car. So be it. I drank, and I drank, trying to dull the ache in my teeth until I passed out. My head rested on my arms on the table. I hadn't realized at the time, but someone had stolen my wallet right out of my jeans while I was asleep. I wasn't dreaming of rainbows and unicorns. I wasn't dreaming of anything nightmarish either. It was just some sort of black void, neither scary nor happy. In the distance, I heard my father's voice say, "Wake up." I felt something on my temple. I didn't know it was the barrel of the gun waiting to explode my face. My dad's words made me lift my head sleepily just as the assailant pulled the trigger so that the bullet didn't go through my brain, but through my lower jaw instead. The bullet blew through my cheek and broke apart a majority of my lower teeth. Bits of hard enamel spewed onto the table and down my throat. The pain went from a deep ache to a bleeding pulse of intense agony. It woke me up to the extreme, and I whipped my head around to see who tried to kill me. Esteban. He wasn't ready to shoot a second time, because he was too busy looking at the damage he did to my jaw. In one quick swoop, I removed my dad's knife from my belt and poked the point under his chin. He dropped the gun immediately. "Did you kill him?" "No, no." "Did you kill him, Esteban?" "No, no, no." "Take me to her now." He nodded okay. The finale was going to take place in a barn, apparently. An old, rustic, dark red barn with large chains on the door, padlocked. Stupid, considering there were windows one could easily climb in through. I always thought my dad's girlfriend was all looks and not an ounce of brain in her head. I should have known better. And I wasn't going to overlook this setup either. Esteban had clearly called me to get me to this country, in cahoots with her. The girlfriend was ready to complete her plan, to get rid of the last person on this planet that might stand in her way of getting everything she ever wanted. Or so it seemed. I wasn't ready to just knock on a barn door and say, "Bienvenido." I wasn't ready to crawl through an open window either. But I was certainly ready to kill Esteban and let that woman know I had arrived. "Por qué, Esteban? Por qué?" I already knew the answer. "Dinero y nada más, verdad?" I asked. His eyes looked to the ground. He watched blood drip from my jaw onto my shoes, and I shot him through his forehead. He crumpled to the ground, and again, I felt nothing other than the small bits of teeth still swimming in the blood in my mouth. I spat, but it was more like I simply drooled, and I watched the padlock open and the chains on the door fall on its own, untouched. "I told you I was waiting for you," the girlfriend yelled from inside the barn. "Let's do this." The doors swung open on their own, blowing dirt towards me, and a powerful stench went through my nostrils. I walked forwards. The inside was filled with coffins, 20 or 25 of them. Hard to tell. They weren't the decked-out ones you pay thousands of dollars for in regards to a loved one, but the type where you got a bunch of plywood in the backyard and you hammer them together in haste, 'cause you're gonna bury someone or something quick and cheap. This was some mass grave type of shit. Every coffin had a man inside. One box was empty. On the second tier of the barn was the girlfriend, peering down at me. I wanted to just shoot her and end all of this right away, but something was stopping me. There was more to this story than just some money and furniture being stolen. In fact, at this point it seemed that those things were completely irrelevant. I didn't know what the answer was at the time, but I sure as shit know now. Before I knew what to do, and while I was still kind of gawking at all the dead in boxes, I heard something from the outside. 2 women were hunched over Esteban, dragging his lifeless body towards the one empty box. I considered stopping them. Once his body was inside the makeshift coffin, one of the women took out a pair of pliers and began pulling teeth, one by one. The sound of each bloodied tooth plopping against the plywood was another noise, like the damn bird's head being chewed on that will forever be burned inside my brain. "Look to me, my child," the girlfriend said to me. "Do not let the gruesomeness of this display fool you. This is a moment of perfect harmony, one that does not happen often." "What are you doing?" I said. She held a Southern Lapwing and began to stroke its body in tenderness. "It's a transition, you see." "Of what?" "One can't transition without an offering," she said. "An offering to what?" "You'll see," she replied. "Who the hell's gonna want a bunch of naked dudes?" The girlfriend smiled as she broke the bird's neck in between her fingers. "They aren't really the full offering. They're but only a tiny fraction." "Estamos listos," one of the women said. The girlfriend began whispering softly. They closed the barn doors behind me. I made sure my trigger finger was ready to fire at a moment's notice. And then, all of the bodies sat up. Their eyes opened wide, like their toothless mouths. My stomach turned. Not like I was going to puke, but as if my whole damn body was ready to explode. She continued to whisper softly. Well, I freaked the fuck out. I didn't know what to do, and I just reacted. I turned and shot both of the women by the doors. The bullets were useless. No blood expelled from their bodies. No pain registered on their faces. They just snickered a boring snicker like they had been shot many times before. I looked back at the girlfriend, still whispering. She had separated the bird's head from its body and placed it inside her mouth. Just great. And as she started to chew on it, I felt something forming inside my own mouth. My jaw wasn't working too well. It was still attached and I could move it, but I could barely bite down. My tongue investigated the furry texture growing in my mouth, mixed with my own blood. The girlfriend smiled at me. "Chew, my dear," she laughed. How that bird went from her mouth to mine, I have no idea. But I didn't spit it out. I couldn't. My stomach tightened, My mind clouded, and I fell to my knees. The girlfriend was down on the first floor of the barn now. I didn't see how she got down, or when. She walked through the bodies towards me. I couldn't lift the gun anymore. My arms were paralyzed. I could feel the bird's head moving inside my mouth. The girlfriend finally stopped whispering. She opened up my jaw and shoved her hand inside my mouth, pushing the bird past my teeth and right down my throat. The only thing I could do was swallow. I felt my eyes roll into the back of my head. "Such fun you'll have," she said to me. The last thing I saw was the girlfriend taking my father's Rambo knife and plunging it into my heart, and then, poof, like some magical Rasputin, Jack and the Beanstalk, Wizard of Oz type shit happened. There I was, standing inside my father's house, whispering to myself. More specifically, I was in his office. The moonlight crept through the bay window of his office. The fog rolled by, and I finally saw what happened a month ago. Shit-faced, my dad was fishing naked by the river. He had a fishing pole in one hand and a beer in the other. The girlfriend stood next to him with a beer in one hand and the Rambo knife in the other. I watched as the girlfriend raised the knife up high from behind him. And just before she stabbed, something tugged on the fishing pole. My father slipped because of it and was pulled into the river, cracking his skull on a large rock on the way down. I walked through the rooms of my father's house dejected. The furniture was gone. The squatters were gone. It was just me and one other thing. The curse. It was the wooden bowl with the teeth, pictures, bird, and lit candle. I moved my tongue and felt my bloody gums, but my jaw no longer hurt. My chest where I was stabbed no longer hurt. I realized I was still whispering softly. I didn't know what I was saying, but I recognized the sounds I was making resembled the same dialect as the girlfriend. One by one, I picked up a tooth from the wooden bowl, licked the blood off of it, and placed it inside my mouth, jamming them into my gums. Somehow, the gums cradled each tooth like it was my own, like they had always been a perfect fit. After the last tooth went inside my mouth, I extinguished the candle with my thumb and index finger. My father's house went black, and I was finally ready. Like I said in the beginning, I ain't nothing like you. I used to be, but not anymore. And I'm gonna do whatever I want. 'Cause it's my time to flourish. I have nothing holding me back. Intende? And that's the end of our spooky series this year. Thank you all so much for joining me for this very fun season of horrible crafts and scary stories. Now, I've been told not to say I'll be back, but I'll be back. Take care of yourselves, happy Halloween, and as always, sweet dreams.